You have every right to be concerned about what we are witnessing as it relates to federal law enforcement and the intelligence services. You see, the power of the central government, the federal government, is being ever more turned inward toward the people, we the people. I've been saying for years that a socialist or communist nation with a restricted economy will always first and foremost project its power inward, the central authority, to control the population. A free society with a free market will first and foremost project its central authority outward, its powers. When power is projected outward, the government is protecting the people from foreign powers or peoples. When the power is projected inward, the government is actually protecting itself from the people. And there are one too many people in Washington, in both parties, that believe the government is here to control us, not to serve us. Ronald Reagan put it best when he said, we're a nation with a government, not the other way around.
We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people.
There was a time when the American left despised big corporations and federal law enforcement. They thought government-run education was being used to indoctrinate children into a false and jingoistic view of patriotism. What we are seeing now with schools, corporations, and the federal government is known as the Long March. In short, from renew.org, the Long March through the institutions of society. Quote, the Long March through the institutions was a phrase attributed to the Italian communist Antonio Gramsci, then coined as a succinct mission statement by Marxist student activist Rudy Dutschke in the 1960s. The phrase is used to describe the intellectual takeover of a society without the need to resort to a military conflict. Instead, the strategy focuses on slowly winning over the chief institutions that determine the direction of a culture and thereby creating a soft revolution from within. Those institutions, so the focus was on the universities, then the unions, the arts, the K through 12 schools, the media, then corporations, and finally the society as a whole. And the way you enforce that is with law enforcement. Parents, Catholics, Second Amendment supporters, traditional Americans, you could be all of the above, are ever more being targeted and treated like a threat, while actual terrorists and cartels and even foreign enemy powers are being treated like secondary threats. You know, according to the Biden administration, the number one threat to the United States is white supremacist domestic terrorism, even if those white supremacists happen to be black or Latino or of Indian descent. But that's the excuse, you see, to surveil everyone. You kind of have to admire, in a way, this new progressive and inclusive white supremacist movement, right? What that really is any political movement. What that really means is they're going to target any political movement, no matter who comprises it, that dares to question the abuse of power coming out of Washington. And if the federal government has to fake the threat to justify increased surveillance and the targeting of Americans who do not subscribe to the left's new power center.
In August 2022, I made protected whistleblower disclosures to my immediate supervisor, assistant special agents in charge, and special agent in charge about my concerns regarding January 6 investigations assigned to my office. I believed our departures from case management rules established in the FBI's Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide could have undermined potentially righteous prosecutions and may have been part of an effort to inflate the FBI's statistics on domestic extremism. I also voiced concerns that the FBI's use of SWAT and large-scale arrest operations to apprehend suspects who were accused of nonviolent crimes and misdemeanors represented by counsel and who pledged to cooperate with the federal authorities in the event of criminal charges created an unnecessary risk to FBI personnel and public safety.
See, they're just conflating all this stuff. That's Stephen Friend. He's going to be on this program next week. The whistleblowers have come from within the FBI and come out of the shadows to tell us that there are elements within the FBI that are using federal law enforcement to curtail the rights of Americans and creating a false notion to justify their exercise of power. And God help you if you expose them.
All of the hardships you've gone through. If one of your really good friends, your former colleagues, came to you and said, I have this thing that is being covered up, and I think the American people need to know about it, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them first to pray about it long and hard. And I would tell them I could take it to Congress for them, or I could put them in touch with Congress, but I would advise them not to do it.
So you would legitimately try to protect one of your colleagues from doing what you have done?
Absolutely.
And how do you think that solves being able to shine light on corruption, weaponization, any kind of misconduct that exists with the American people?
It doesn't solve it. But the FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. And we are all examples of that.
I can't think of a more sobering way to end a hearing. I yield back.
The First Amendment to the United States Constitution protects our freedom of speech, our right to assemble peaceably, and our right to the freedom of religion. Representative Jim Jordan got confirmation that pro-life Catholics and Christians are in fact a target of the FBI.
We have the memorandum from the Richmond field office about Catholics, right? If you're pro-life, pro-family, and you're Catholic, look out. The FBI wanted to put people inside the church, inside the parish, to spy on fellow citizens. Does that surprise you, Mr. O'Boyle? Did that actually happen in the Richmond field office?
It doesn't, not anymore.
Scary. And you know that memorandum, by the way? It was signed off by 5 people in that office. One of them was the chief division counsel, a lawyer who supposedly went to law school and probably had a course on the Constitution, signed off on that memorandum. Scary stuff. Scary stuff.
We're not worried about the Chinese or even the Russians, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, the Sinaloa cartel. We're worried about pro-life Catholics. That's a crime now, being pro-life. Or even daring to shout during a school board meeting might get you a visit from the feds. What federal law you're breaking, I have no idea. You're not bringing fentanyl across the border. That's fine. Look at what is happening at the border. Millions of people are crossing the border illegally. And what's the federal government doing about it? Foreign peoples? Nothing. You know what they are doing? Projecting the power inward and hiring 87,000 new tax enforcers. IRS
That's salacious, and you know that. Most Americans, by far, pay their taxes, and they do it honorably. What House Republicans, and frankly the Republican Party, is concerned about is having IRS agents go after middle-class families and small business owners. When you have that many more agents, it's not to go after the rich. It's to go after the middle class. That's what it's for.
So if you're paying what you're supposed to pay, then you should have nothing to fear.
You would make the assumption that IRS audits are up, that they're putting out more liens on the American people. That's not true. That data is not there. All Joe Biden's trying to do is find every possible nickel out of every couch from every American to pay for his radical spending. Why would we do that?
Chuck Todd's wife is a Democrat operative, and so is he. But what do you have to hide? You don't want more IRS agents? What are you cheating? Maybe we should investigate you. Is that the attitude in D.C.? Yeah, it is. That's the attitude in D.C. We're going to hire more tax enforcers. We're going to have more surveillance campaigns. We're going to track more people that fall outside the left. You're the new subversive. This is exactly why the framers put the Fifth Amendment into the Constitution to protect you from being treated guilty until proven innocent. But traditional Americans, constitutionalists, patriots, veterans, Second Amendment supporters, law-abiding gun owners, people of faith are all being targeted, while external forces are being ignored. That is the mark of a nation undergoing a soft socialist revolution. You have every right to be concerned about this.